Greetings. What's happening? Y'all bear with me. Charging this up. Let me get off this. Okay. Greetings. Let's give honor to Source. Let's give honor to the Creator for making all these things possible. Gratitude for all of you that being here. I appreciate you all the support along the way. Haven't said much about that in a while, but I just appreciate everyone along my journey that's been following me to so interesting. The last 3 years feel like 30 to 3,000 years. But let's give honor to Source, the Creator, for making all this possible. You could have been anywhere else, but now you're here with me in another episode of my life, my experiences, bringing you into my world and so forth. But there's something I wanted to cover that I realized I never shared with y'all. But if you've been following me with my videos, I've been talking a lot about the transition of wealth right now, the greatest wealth transfer when it comes to spiritual, emotional, physical, mental, all those things together. And the topic at hand I'm going to speak about as well, similarly to that. Let me make sure. Y'all give me a moment to shut this door. So that being said, this thing keep turning. It does its own thing sometimes. I screenshotted this, and I didn't realize how much so that when I was covering a certain generation, I was talking about the baby boomers and so forth, and I overlooked one that was very important. I was like, "Ooh, this brings even more clarity." Okay, y'all bear with me right now. This brings me even more clarity. Okay, here we go. It says, why do you think so differently? It's not your fault. Baby boomers, I've told y'all before, 1946 to 1964. I don't know if I said already. Let's give honor to the ancestors known and unknown. So let's give gratitude for the most part, of all, the ones who did pave the way. Don't ever think when I'm voicing these things or saying it it's an attack on anyone else. No, it's to bring awareness to why we think differently. So I came across this, and this is from a post on Instagram. It says, no_excuses_error. I always want to shout out, where I get my information, or, again, I'm just gaining my own clarity and awareness around this and giving you my perspective to make you think, independently think, or, use your own self-awareness and come to your own self-realization. Baby boomers are 1946 through 1964. And it states, work hard, stay loyal, the system will reward you. Now, if you're following me, 1964, even 46 is not even that many years ago. If you do the math, it's not even, we're not talking not even 100 years ago. It also says, build the system, now watching the system crumble. So, the baby boom was 1946, 1964. These are some of our great-grandmothers and so forth, or great-grandparents, or for some, it's even their parents. Yeah? So that's not long ago. Now, this is the one that it didn't dawn on me till it connected. I was like, Gen X. Because I was talking about those who, from 1981 to 1996, which is your millennials. And now Gen X, I realized, was 1965 to 1980, where it states, trust no one, figure it out yourself. For the forgotten generation, but the backbone of change. Now, what's so interesting, because I'm going to pull this up now, about this that I never highlighted. That's something my daughter was. Hold on. Let's see. I got this camera thing in front of Gen X. Let's type in Gen X trauma. Okay. Now again, you say what resonate. This is an AI overview, of course. Growing up during the periods of social and economic change, Gen X grew up during times of significant social shifts and economic downturns, potentially leading to instability and insecurities in their childhood. Now, when you look at the date of that 1965 to 1980s, these are the people around 40, 50, if not 60, if I'm correct, years of age. What is that? Latchkey kids? Now, this is new to me. I'm just reading these things. Many Gen Xers were latchkey kids returning to unsupervised home after school, which could contribute to feelings of loneliness and potentially negative developmental outcomes or something. Wow. I gotta really make a part 2 of this, because from being a bridge, because if this is like around because I'm 9 years away on the cusp of this, 1980. So if this is like around my mother and them age, this make a lot of sense, because I experienced that. So it shows again how I've always said, like, the transferring wealth is also emotionally and also generational patterns, behavior patterns. So when he talks about how even people, the loneliness and coming home to unsupervised, I dealt with that very young. So because of my experience, like the 89 I've spoken before about the crack epidemic and stuff like that in certain demographics, they played a major toll on a lot of people being unsupervised, or a lot of us felt like a burdensome, where we didn't really feel, which I'm gonna get into, feel like for me, like having anything to really kind of live for. And in that sense, what I mean, like, carrying so much emotional burdens or emotional baggage from the past generation and so forth and moving forward. So let's continue reading. Adverse childhood experiences. Gen X childhoods include exposure to potential traumatic experiences such as bullying, sexual harassment, and a higher prevalence of parental divorce. That's very interesting. Okay, let's talk about economic stresses. Financial insecurities. Gen X experienced shaky economic times, including recession and soaring college tuition rates, leading to potential financial strains and debt. Now, I don't know who that speaks for, what type of class, but I'm very much aware of the recession aspect of that, because when we're talking about the Great Depression, from what the baby boomers experienced, through that, warlike aspect or mentality and survival mentality, where, it's the work hard mentality, stay loyal, don't question anything, and the system will reward you. So a lot of us are dealing with people who, from the 1946 and to some of them a lot of them are leaving this world. That has a lot to do with, a mindset and an energy that carries. So, what else here? With that, also, you talk about things financially, retirement savings concerns. Many Gen Xers are lagging in retirement savings despite nearing retirement age, contributing to financial anxiety. Wow. I know a lot of people right here, right now, experiencing that they really don't talk about. Adult challenges. Sandwich generation. Gen X is often burdened with the caring for both aging parents and their own children. Whoa, that is very interesting. Because when you look at the age gap, how many years is that? When you look at that, so it's 25 to 25, 2000. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. Increasing stress of caretaking responsibility. Wow, so I know a lot of emphasis on what's right now is happening, because there was something else I want to talk about, but it makes a lot of sense how it ties into even the neglect around the self-neglect, the self-abuse, coming from one baby boomer, with the hard-working aspect, which causes them to neglect their well-being, and then resentment grows, and then this is passed on to Gen X, where, how can they really trust a lot of the system and so forth, again, when their consciousness or their awareness is completely different. And it's almost like they're forgotten, because a lot of those 1946 to 1964, whether they dealt with, working all the time. You're talking about generations who had to work so much to put food on the table, to survive. Then here you are with these Gen Xers, where during this time after the Great Depression, or war, like so many things dealing with that's never talked about, because these are generations that never sat down and talked. So around the 1980s, then that's when you had these the war on drugs and so forth. So those are a lot of the generations where it said the forgotten generation. That makes a lot of sense. But they are the backbone to change, because they had to fend for themselves almost. And I can see a lot of that, how it plays into us, 1981, 1990 through 1996. Find purpose, breaks the 9 to 5. And so that's the thing with the entrepreneurial spirit that I tell y'all about when it comes to just people from 1981 to 1996 that I know of personally and I can relate to. And then it also says burnt out from chasing dreams and paying rent. Now, the funny thing about that is, my structure, growing up, and I can confess to this, it's like, from those experience of things being so unresolved, I recently was telling the therapist, like, I'm at a place now where I'm glad that I became more aware of what I was experiencing. My mother wounds and also my father wounds, those very vital pieces missing played a major part into me taking full accountability now on my actions. And also the unresolved things where my mother and father never discussed, or just him not being there, or just certain men not being there, implementing those very things to creating more stability inwardly and outwardly, because that mother reflects that inward stability that we all deserve and desire. Then that father shows us that through assertive. They both play their major parts, but that specific role, and then becoming more aware of that now, realizing like, oh my gosh, is this energy that I'm playing out, the things that I'm becoming aware of, has a lot to what is generationally has been passed on, the behavior patterns. Because I don't know if I mentioned before, and I'm not ashamed and don't feel guilt, because at a point in time I felt like oh, how dare I say that? No, this is a lot of people in demographics where you see the Section 8, or you see the codependency to certain systems, and then it's unrealistic now, I can say, like when you're talking about a system that, again, as it states, from 1946 to 1964, work hard, stay loyal to a system that will reward you. Those who built the system during that time are now watching the system crumble. So it's like, how could I not? Like, the awareness around the fact, though, I see a lot of these elders that are transitioning, and then a lot of them that are panicking silently because of the system that they built is crumbling and what they built it upon. And a lot of us are forgetting these are narcissistic templates or narcissistic structures, capitalistic structures, if that's the word, or dealing with capitalism and so forth, or dealing with a false sense of empowerment when it comes to a representation of the patriarchal and both matriarchal. So a lot of those baby boomers, or a lot of those Gen Xers, these are both from dealing from 1946 to 1980, which is it's a short period of time. That's only 16 years. So even with that, you're talking about in that 16 years, like, so much going on, so much repressed, so much suppressed, unresolved memories and emotions, generationally speaking, That's not far along from where my grandfather transitioned months ago, not even being a year out, to where he was around that age of like 70-ish, early 70-ish. And so that's not long ago from what he had to deal with and things we never had conversations about. You know, times where people of a darker race or culture, or just, you know, darker hue in certain demographics, especially the South, dealt with things that they could not speak about. So during that silence where they just had to put their head down and literally work their fingers to the bone just to provide, not to mention the resistance that they would get from said system, they were not built for them to progress or to even expand beyond, you know, not only a mindset, but expand beyond their not just other horizons, but their demographics in their environment. So as much as people say, oh yeah, you know, it's not about race, it's not about that, but the climate from baby boomers up to the very now, not even 100 years later, the climate of the self-hatred experience in the country, the climate around the repressed and suppressed emotions and memories that has been lingering from a passive aggressive society who is now overly hypersensitive because they are fearful of accountability. That's what this is about. So with that, there was somewhere else I was going with when the fact of, you know, dealing with that personally. If I don't reflect on where and see how, I know I was going with it, like with my grandfather, and then when I look at my patriarchal aspect, my grandfather from my mother's side, that experience is different, but the closest patriarchal aspect to me that is also in my bloodline is my father. And this was something that I realized, like, I had to, as a generational curse breaker or a cycle breaker, you know, when you look at these things and you become aware of it and you study it, you're realizing what you're breaking. You're realizing why you think, or even you know, you're not only just your thinking, but your being and your way of life is completely different than it's supposed to be. As I've spoken before in my previous video, how we're supposed to be better decision making, becoming more aware of, I don't know why these chairs are so short to where it's like, I don't like leaning back, my posture and stuff. So we're talking about better decision making, shifting our mindset, shifting a way of being and so forth, and then being more intentional. So that being said, when I'm sitting here reading this off, and I haven't even got to Gen Z and what they call Gene Alpha, these are things that's so close aligned to where you have, let me see, you have, when I was going back to like finding, you know, not being ashamed or guilty of the fact of, you know, my father never owning a home. You know, never like owning a home. I'm not saying like renting or something. I'm talking about literally owning a home, like having something like that, stability. I believe my grandfather did, but due to his health and how he had a transition, I'm not sure if he owned a home per se. But you know, his transitioning wasn't in the home that I grew up in, seeing him, our experience in. But other than that, that was a big thing for me. And then also demographically, where your experiences growing up has a lot to do with your trajectory on how you view life, what your purpose is, finding your purpose, and even aligning your actions with that. Because what good is it if we're speaking it, but our actions are not, aligning with that? So I was telling my partner, someone else, it's like, it amazes me how we want to push kids and push people into, this setting of what we feel they should be. When I spoke before in my previous video, it's like we're dealing with an undeveloped society. We're dealing with an undeveloped community and community settings and people. And what I mean by that, we're talking about people who are 40, 50, 60, when you look at their childhood development or their child development stages in life, How can you not see that in this demographic that these people will be more advanced in certain areas if they don't have certain access to certain resources? So when we're talking about people acting out, that says a lot about, well, are they emotionally developed? Are they emotionally, their emotional impulses, where does it stem from? Instead of the attack, and instead of we're not recognizing why was this put in place, who is it benefiting, on all levels, and then so forth. With that, when you're talking about emotional development, you're talking about spiritual development as well, physical development, because we've been so focused on, we're talking about the collapsing of a system around baby boomers who most of built a society, these communities. Most of what you're seeing, the transition of the wealth, when I go into certain these neighborhoods that that is a predominantly, let's say, of a lighter or fairer skinned person or Caucasian, whatever you want to say, but when you dive deeper into their nationalities, a lot of what you see in the so-called America or certain communities that are potentially well off, you're talking about generations, or some people who came into whatever they said, like wealth or whatever it is, again, through hard work or abuse of power, violence. It's so many things. For us to overlook the fact of the warlike tendencies, the behaviors and so forth that also you see displayed in certain behavior patterns of their descendants. There's no difference in you seeing it displayed in certain demographics who don't have said resources to what? How to navigate and regulate a dysregulated or chronic nervous system. So with that, it keeps certain people in an undeveloped state. It keeps them never resolving the loophole that they're in, and then for them to even find a solution. Because if you're giving just said certain people certain resources, and them over here never really having it, they're not developing or not going to develop mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, consciously, in a place where someone else who is given said more healthier foods, have more access to things that are more for them to have more a sense of heightened awareness, or them to have a more easier outlet, to obtaining things that makes their life more easier, or makes their life more peaceful, I should say, or more harmonious. But I was just telling my partner, I was like, I came to this realization, like, wow, I said, to look at the polarity of the fact of like how you grew up around people who were passive aggressive, but I grew up around people who were overly aggressive. So when you look at the climate, and this is not all of humanity, but when you look at the climate of let's say America, or when you look at other places where you have this stigma between black and white, where this division aspect of black and white when you're dealing with so-called race, and see how these certain people are taught to be passive aggressive on the issues that these people have. In any chance you can have, like any chance you get, you never want them to be in the same setting where they can resolve, because how can you make profit on the division that you keep implementing, or how can you profit off of the policing, or how can you hire people if you don't have crime, if you don't keep, let's say, allegedly a race war or race baiting, or keep the division, focus on people dividing rather than coming together? How can your business thrive, if you don't have, if it doesn't, the energy or even the foundation behind it isn't fueled off hatred? When you look at the media, when you look at social media, so many things that, again, it literally is attacking, or almost like reeling people in to believe that well, this people are like this all the time. Well, this people never cared about you. You know, all these different distractions or things to keep people believing like this is who people are and have always been. Until you actually sit down or actually meet someone and realize like, wow, outside of the fact of how you have a certain class or you have a certain people from my experience who, like I mentioned before, you will see like, it seems like the focus has been people that don't look like me is to believe to have fun and go on all the vacations. You know, a lot of us don't pay attention to the imagery of how when you look at a book, when you look up certain things on a Google, when you look up certain things, there's this emphasis on I'm gonna use this as, you know, white is an adjective, but white being right, white being the happiest, white being the most well off, white being the most successful. And that's where the colorism come in, where you see a lot of people make a lot of profit off of the colorism. So then you'll have where, this is why I say color don't make you kin. This is where you have people, again, who are darker, where it's portrayed that they are also always suffering, always in something, or always, you know, anything dark is evil, malicious, you know, things as such, until a lot of us, you're dealing with, when you have a generation such as the baby boomers, who dealt with so many things where they had to be passive aggressive. When you're talking about, I was telling a man today who, again, a man with blue eyes, a man who grew up in Marysville, Ohio, you know, a farming area where there was predominantly people that are lighter shade. And we're actually forgetting, like, these are people who never, if ever, seen people who look like me until their later years. So you're dealing with generations who were birthed into passive aggressiveness, unresolved traumas, dealing with people, not only within their lineage, but people who they know that they have harmed or unalive to inherit what they say, their land, or taken by force and so forth, that they never told about, they never tell their kids or grandkids about. So you're talking about, this is not a 1,000 years, 50, like if not even 60, 70 years. No, these are people. I tell you how karma comes back around to where the gentleman was telling me how, you know, where he was predominantly people of his complexion. And his brother brought home a girl, he started dating a darker girl, and his mother made a comment like, well, I would have loved for you to date a girl that was lighter. And I was like, I'm not surprised, because, you know, I'm from the South, so certain things is, you know, that isn't taboo to us. Isn't like, oh, that's not a shocker. But when he was getting at, it's like mom, like, you know, his response, his brother, he said his brother, and, you know, their response was like, you know, you would never thought that people would have this internal hatred or even prejudice towards people until things reveal itself. So the reason I'm saying this is that the thing about what a lot of you are going to see, and that's why the climate around racism or self-hatred, a lot of y'all grandmothers and great-grandfathers and so forth have had this underlying, or this, they have built foundations not only inwardly but outwardly, because it starts first within. And it's not just a foundation upon racism, it's the foundation upon hatred, to keep them from connecting from other people, to realize all people are not like that, especially that are darker. And it goes the same for people that are darker. I had to express to him how my grandfather, a great-grandfather that I never met on my, well, my grandmother's father I never met, I had to express to him the story about how men that look like him, you know, unalive my great-grandfather for no reason, because of their hatred for people that were darker. So in that time, you're talking about a grandmother around, my grandmother's in her 70s, so you're talking about a grandmother around that would probably be the baby boomer time, you know, or even before. You're talking about even before that, there were people who literally neighborhoods were so segregated, or communities were so segregated, that people could not go into these places. So we're dealing with, when I say the greatest transfer of wealth, we're dealing with energies here. We're dealing with spiritual things that were not resolved. We're dealing with unresolved emotions around a grandmother, a grandmother, or great grandmother, grandfather, who never got the opportunity to speak, who never got the opportunity. Like I was telling my therapist, the reason I take so much emphasis in gratitude and love and so much passion into therapy is because my fucking great grandfather or someone else didn't have the opportunity. So I'm in therapy not just for me. I'm in therapy for my ancestors and people that came before me who didn't have the opportunity, that this not only would be taboo to them, but this would be deemed as crazy. Like, how dare you go get some help or support? Can't you do everything on your own? Oh, in another generation, they'd be like, go work hard. You shouldn't even worry about your problems. Be strong. You a man, da-da-da-da-da. There's so many things that we are overlooking the fact of. A lot of us are dealing with shit that ain't even ours, but it is in a way because it's in our blood, it's in our genes, it's genetic. So a lot of behaviors, when it does come to resistance, there was a time I did not ever think about considering going to therapy. There was a time where, I didn't ever see myself just as, I had a dream of being not just a family man, but for it to be coming to fruition right now, that shit don't come easy, because guess what? You're asked to be another version, but also the versions of you that you neglected, the versions of you in said generations where, again, your mother and father did not prioritize their well-being. So guess who's left with that to pick up, to realize like, wow, I need to prioritize rest. I'm burnt out because it's a burnt out, meaning that when I was younger, like, bro, I did tree work. And those are more tree work. You're talking about, you got the guy that goes up the tree, cut them down. And people like, no, bro, when you cut those branches down, they look, perception is a motherfucker, because those branches look like they small. But you're talking about dead weight. You're talking about carrying stuff, putting it in the, in the back of the truck, or throwing it through the wood chipper or whatever. And, carrying certain things, you don't realize how much water, if the tree's not completely dried out, how much water is in there. You're talking about construction. So we're following, we don't even know in comments that we're doing behaviors, believing, like I can say that from the baby boomer thing of like working hard, believing in a system that I know to be crumbling, and trying to stay loyal to a system that's disloyal to me, that's not even loyal to men that look like me. When it comes from experiencing, and then also from those baby boomers, from the people who gatekeep their experiences, no matter their colors or demographics, people who gatekeep because they feel like if I'm not working hard, I don't deserve it. I don't deserve what it is, even if I'm doing it in a different way. Then you got the Gen X from 1965 to 1980, where they seem like they're being forgotten about. And I can see how around that age, I believe my mom is around that age, to where I can see people who I know who like feel so forgotten, where they've had to isolate themselves a lot. So those of them who have kids around that age, that's a complete disconnect. And that disconnect stems from the baby boomers, because they worked so much. Mama had to go out there, you talking about systems in place. And that's what y'all don't realize. The crumbling of the system represents the Section 8. The crumbling of those systems, those governmental structures that we want to ignore, represent those very things that have kept people in a mental captivity of not believing that they are great, that they are amazing, that they are a miracle. These are systems that were purposely orchestrating things, whether behind the scenes, to keep people believing and psychologically, siphoning like their well-being, like not even believing like that should matter. And so now you're seeing a lot of these elders right now who are in grocery stores, who don't even know how to sit down. You're seeing a lot of them drunk, strung out, You see, I know a lot of y'all can't relate. You see a lot of them now that don't. They've been so disassociated from the reality to where they don't even know how to have fun. They know nothing about joy. They know nothing about, nurturing themselves or their inner child. They know nothing about honoring and really fulfilling a dream that they've had when they were a child. Because the generation before that, I don't know what the term would be, but the generation before that, they're not even, that's something I have to go on another tangent about. But, you're talking about so many different perspectives where a lot of our women, when you're talking about a system that's crumbling, a lot of them I see will try to tell them, well, girl, you should, especially from my demographics, like, it would be so interesting, like, to see people, like, trying to tell my sisters and trying to tell them they should do this, they should do that, and literally attack them for it. There's a huge thing around that, like, a lot of rage and resentment, a lot of things where as soon as you step out and do something completely different from the generation before, there's a lot of resistance comes with that. A lot of people don't talk about the breadcrumbing or the disconnect and the miscommunication around the fact of y'all did not face y'all shit. Let's talk about it. And the last from my generation to now that are literally, it talks about the Gen Z who's 1997 to 2012 questioning everything. I feel like I'm every one of these people because I can relate to a lot of it because I either seen the people, seen the energy operate, and I seen it through myself. 1997, like I experienced that all the way to 2012. So questioning everything, mental health over hustle, raised online, fighting for peace in a noisy world. Like what the fuck? Like shit, that's me too. And the funny thing about me is like the millennials from 1981 and 1996, bro, we're burnt out simply because like where I grew up at, like I saw a lot of people like in my hometown, like one of the biggest like jobs, and I'm gonna say some people that's all they had, but it was a Tyson's Foods, and a lot of people took so much pride in going there, because this all they had, and to them that was like a luxury. And it's like, it's no judgment, but it's like a luxury because other people felt like, that's the only way they could get past, because it's, when you're in small towns, some of those like companies or corporations or even meals or whatever you want to call them, that's all people have. And what I start to recognize is like, when you're talking about seeing who built those structures, and then I started to dive deep and like, okay, I used to question a lot. I'd be like, well, where did the land come from? How did they build this? Who built this? Then you talk about first, second, third generation, people who own the companies and so forth, how they became millionaires, all these other things, and then having people that you see predominantly a darker or even like lighter shade in certain positions who were almost like over the people that were darker. And I was like, oh my God, I almost like, is this like modern day slavery? And the reason I say that because it was just like the people whose mindset were just slave to the fact that they couldn't do better, or not realizing like how there was a role reversal at one point in time. Things were much different. And how that they believed that that's all they had. Like there were moments where I was always trying to orchestrate something that was different. I was trying to focus on something that was completely different. I was like, this cannot be everything, bro. And for me, it's like I could not do the 9 to 5s. I don't care how much people used to get pissed. I was like, bro, this is not it. I couldn't do it. And then people say, you're lazy, how you gonna do this, how you gonna make a living? Like I went through a lot of emotions, I went through a lot of things to try to realize, like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? How can I be a bridge now from the youth to my generation? Like how can I be a bridge even after those, like to be honest with them? And when it talks about how even the Gen Z, I was talking about questioning everything, mental health over hustle, is because they're looking at us. And then we're looking at the other generation like, y'all telling me to do this, y'all ain't even fucking happy. Y'all ain't even really love what you do. So you didn't even prioritize yourself. So now you want to convince me? And a lot of them stayed in these settings, whether it's that job or this and that, and never looked beyond becoming much more bigger or grander on the scale of like, you know, being there but just staying stagnant. And then all they would do was like party or wait till the weekend, get drunk, you know, do the same thing, come back Monday. You know, it was like almost like, when I say undeveloped, the setting and the climate of just, when you see these structures, I was like, yo, how can we not see that these people are 40, 50, 60, that again are like with childlike, like immature mindsets towards life. And I don't mean in an innocent way. I'm just like never really growing up, because there's so much resistance when you have someone come in where it seems like they're disrespecting them. Cause how dare you speak up, or how dare you talk back to, you know, your elder? How dare you do? I'm like, talk back? How the fuck we supposed to communicate? How dare you do this? How dare you do this? It's so many things around that. Well, I'm like, bro, make this make sense. Make this make sense. I would right now. I would like the mental health crisis right now. I would want my child to even be like have the opportunity to where she feels safe and my son feels safe within themselves to speak to me about what it is that's going on. How life, not even just, it ain't even that life beats them down. It's like, how can they enjoy life and not take it so seriously, but at the same time enjoy it, you know, and not attach themselves so much to the outcome. We were never taught these things. That was never instilled in us to where we make said mistake or make a decision and then be reminded of our greatness within us. Be reminded of how powerful, how persistent, you know, stay consistent on your entrepreneurship. Stay consistent on your bettering your health. We didn't come from generations like that. And if I'm speaking from my experience, and some of us, I know that can relate to the depths of that. So we're talking about a change in not only a mental or a consciousness, we're talking about collectively to where, what are we prioritizing? If you have a generation who talked about work hard and so forth and stay loyal, you're talking about they stay loyal in things that were in career settings, whatever their nationality is, demographic, they stay loyal to things that did not uphold integrity. They work hard only to come to this self-realization. I'm speaking for some, but most of them work hard to realize like they work their life away, literally, or they realizing what do they work towards. Because they didn't enjoy it. They worked their life away, worried and worked their life away. And I'm grateful because the beauty of it is that I'm able to see what they did for me not to do, but to do it better. So with that, it's like, how can I sit here and ignore the fact of they're wanting me to just, you know, and that's why I had to realize cutting ties with a lot of things. Like, you want me to end up like you? A lot of y'all working yourself literally to them. And I already have. Then when you're forced, when your illness or something comes in or something shows up in your body due to unresolved things in your chakra system and your wellness and so forth, now all of a sudden you're forced to sit down. And then with a lot of them, they don't even know how. They don't want to. And they still have to go work, go find a part-time, go do this. So again, for people around my age group, 1981 or 96, again, you're dealing with different perspective, different consciousness, different awareness. And that's why we're dealing with different worlds. We're dealing with different people. And the beauty of it is I'm glad I caught this now young because, you know, man, I've been meeting people today. Like I met another elder around the time I met the other young man. He told me about his experience, but this elder, I can just tell that was in the service, the army or whatever, and didn't have a kid, didn't have a wife or anything. And it's like I sit back like I wonder, does he deal with PTSD? I wonder, does he even know how to commit to himself, or what commitment is other than the service, other than a warlike mentality? What is unresolved within him? Because he had 2 dogs, but I'm like, that was brings them happiness, to each their own. But it makes me wonder when I see people like that in different perspectives of men. I'm like, wow, like, is he really genuinely enjoying life, or is he distracted himself because he don't really know how? And like I said, I don't know all the details, but don't know really how. You know what I'm saying? To enjoy life outside of, because I told you before, when I read those PTSD symptoms, sounds and certain things trigger people. They go into episodes. And I wonder sometimes, is that why a lot of them don't have successful marriages? A lot of y'all don't know, a lot of those marriages, and y'all know of some, a lot of those marriages when people married into the military or certain things, a lot of people, some of them, even after that, generations, people now, they did it and then they realized like they divorced, or they did it for the money just to make more money in the military. I know of people who done that. Like I said, to each their own, but it's like a lot of your elders did the same thing to have some type of stability. It's almost like a sacrifice. And that's the thing, it was so much sacrificing self, sacrificing the enjoyment, or sacrificing your well-being for external validation. And that's how I see the service thing. Again, my perspective, it's like to serve something that really didn't serve you anything of greater good. But to them, they feel like they serve their country, and people will cuss me out. They will be so pissed at me for saying like, I'm like, but what do you serve? Who was harmed? What did you complete, or what was the purpose behind it? And it'll make a lot of them think, or become aware, like, for what? Because have you seen this country lately? What was the purpose of it? I'm grateful, but what was the purpose of it? Was it creating division? Were you behind a country or environment that were bullying people? Did you take that war? Did you take those emotions? Were you taught to take those things and go and attack people? And now you're left with the fact of unrepressed emotions and memories with PTSD, to where you can't even now be around your family, or even if you did create one, can you even be around in certain environments? Because the man that I talked to today, it's a reason why he don't want to be near the city, and I know why, because of the noise. A lot of things that goes on with them that is not talked about in a grander scale, or in a bigger. There is so, and guess what? A lot of us as present-day men, when you're talking about growing up in environments where we never had a solution, where we never, truly, where we never truly had a solution to find out like how we come to terms with that, how we really, how we never, a lot of these grandfathers never went to therapy, never really got the support. They were given medication. They were given a lot of things that temporarily never solved their internal issues, or the energy, or the repressed emotions truly behind that. They dealt with a lot of chronic depression. They're still dealing with a lot of chronic illnesses and so forth within their body. And I can go deeper, but I'm gonna do a part 2 to this. So y'all take care of yourself. I gotta do some things right quick. So peace and blessings. Shalom.